Today, we're speaking to three filmmakers: Danielle Sellwood, who's the founder and creative director of Find It Film, a social enterprise which aims to get more people into sport by showcasing and inspiring female athletes and role models. Danielle entered her film about the climber Georgia Pilkington into our Adventure Uncovered Film Festival in 2018, and it was brilliant. So we're going to show you that shortly. We're also speaking to Christina Baldwin and Bronwyn Harvey, who are the two directors behind Undercurrents. Undercurrents won our New Talent category this year, and it's a film about connection, compassion, surfing, and the UK surf scene. It's brilliant. So we're going to show Engage Your Senses, Georgia Pilkington, Danielle's film now, and we're going to show you the opening of Undercurrents, and then we're going to talk to Danielle, Christina, and Bronwyn about the films. Your senses.
The pain you feel when climbing on granite is quite intense, especially on your hands. If you touch a really sharp crystal but you're trying to be strong, and you've got to kind of push past that little sharp pain. When I do make a move onto like a really tiny crystal, it can actually hurt. But pushing past that feeling of like the sharpness of that, it kind of drives you to get the climb done as well, to not think about the fact that you are above your bolt or your bit of gear and you could fall and possibly injure yourself. It kind of makes me push on and forget about the other things I need to worry about. Well, usually before a climb I get quite nervous, excited, because there's so many things you have to think about. So hopefully the gear will stay, or am I tied in properly? And usually before a climb I have to really put my brain in gear and just get rid of all the floaty noise around and all the thoughts and things like that. I'm usually really psyched for climbing anyway, but sometimes I do get a bit nervous and anxious because of having anxiety through my autism. It does put me off sometimes, and usually I don't look as excited when I'm about to pull on, but the second I get on it's just washes away all the horrible things. And I kind of breathe as well, I don't realise that I haven't been breathing up to that point, and then when I'm on the climb and I'm breathing and taking big gasps of air, and it makes me feel kind of alive and myself. I do put a lot of pressure on myself. I don't really pat myself on the back a lot, but looking back at all the things I have done, so Stoa was pretty epic, and then obviously the Matterhorn is pretty scary, but I still got through that and lived to tell the tale, and knowing I've been through that, and it's kind of makes me feel oh cool, I'm not so bad. But yeah.
remember when I first started, and I got this like 12-foot plank, and then this guy helped me drag it down to the beach. And I was a really skinny little thing, and nobody really showed me how to do it, but I kind of had an idea, and I stood up. And it was just an amazing sense of freedom that I felt. It was just like somebody had taken an eraser or a rubber and just wiped my mind clear.
Awe-inspiring experiences create pro-social behaviour. So if you think about all the blue spaces that we enjoy so much, when we're sitting out paddling or waiting for a set to come in, we have those awe-inspiring moments where we realise the vastness of the environment around us and how small we are, but also how significant we are as part of that. You forget that you're separate from that space.
We can drive ourselves mad, frantically trying to work out everything that's going to happen in the future, which is anxiety states, or ruminating endlessly on things that have gone on in the past, which is a characteristic of the depressed mind. In mindfulness, we want to be aware of the present moment and be open to all the sensations that arise. So there's something about activities that force you to pay attention.
I'm still acknowledging the power that it has to make me feel better, more alive, more present.
That's what I'm still in the middle of doing now. It's kind of looking back at what I used to do as a surfer, and now realising, well, where do I go from here? I loved, from that first moment, escape. And I think that's what the ocean gives you, doesn't it? It's that
God, we're all blonde.
It means we're outside a lot. That's good.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Not at the moment. I think just as a way to kind of introduce it and introduce the conversation, for me, both films, I think, are very different, but share quite a lot in terms of the themes that they cover. Both look at really awesome, inspiring athletes, female athletes. Both also really touch on this point of connection, and how through being outside and through doing sport, that the focus that brings and the mindfulness that brings really allows you to connect with yourself, your environment, and there's something so healing about that. And for me, that's something that I can really relate to in a personal way. And I think that's why I love the work that you do, Danielle, and also the Undercurrents film. It's a really powerful part to it, and a component that both films really share. I think to start with, I'm going to turn my video off and hand over to you three.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie. So who begins? Hi. Well, how about I talk about, because there's only me and there's two of you. What I so most of my films, people have got some level of ability in the sport. So although, you know, some of them are elite athletes, some of them are kind of mid-range athletes, but actually that's not really what we focus on, because we're more interested in their actual experience. So I'm always interested to know how you choose the characters. So you had two very different characters in your film. And yeah, I was just curious, like with all of the female surfers out there, how did you choose which two to focus on?
They found us, didn't they?
Yeah.
We were talking about this the other day, about a lot of the film has been quite revolves around serendipity, really. When we first started discussing the film and then discussed it with other people, a friend just said, hey, I know a champion surfer who lives on, the Jersey Channel Islands. I can get in touch with her if you like. And just went, yeah, that sounds great. And she sent us an email and said she'd love to talk to us more about it. And so we just picked up some gear and we went to Jersey, and Arlene had gathered together about 5 or 6 other girls, and we just interviewed them straight from there, and then learned more about their characters. And it sort of started off there. I think Natalie was in that group of girls. So it was Natalie, Arlene, a couple of other amazing, lovely surfers, all different ages, because our film had actually started quite differently. It was 5 surfers of different ages, and we were going to chat about how we all follow the same thing. So we're all surfing because of the connection. Doesn't matter what age we are. And but because the film took so long to make, some of those characters couldn't stay in for the long run, and that's kind of how we were left with Arlene and Natalie, which was quite interesting because they're both, as you say, just completely different. Arlene comes from such a competitive background, and Natalie is very much a free surfer and a yogi. So, and then I think, when you're making films, you kind of want to simplify it as much as possible. So to have so many characters in as well didn't really work with the amount of themes that we had in the film as well. So we thought those two really complemented what we were trying to get across.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have surfed since I was a teenager, not to any level, but I enjoy going surfing, and I guess I'm similar sort of age to Arlene, I'm not sure, but a lot of like the cultural aspects from when she was competing was just I haven't really touched that world for so long, and just like even just the graphics and the style and everything was just so familiar. But also that sense of how women really weren't necessarily that welcome in some of those worlds. I mean, I remember going out surfing and all the boys being really quite sort of, I know, just taking the mickey out of me or whatever. Just, it was quite unusual. So I kind of felt some of her, I could feel how it had been for her, some of her frustrations. So I really loved that. But then I also really loved the environmental aspect that you brought through, and, the Sea Shepherd connection and all of that as well, because anybody that uses the great outdoors, obviously, pretty much wants to protect it and is interested in environmental issues. So I mean, there's so many different themes. How do you focus in on the themes?
That's been one of the hardest things, because all of the women in the film have sort of shared such amazing, interesting insight. Obviously there's real sort of challenges in issues around inequality with women in surfing, and like Arlene's experience and stuff like that, and obviously there's lots of really bad things going on in the world and the environment, but what was amazing with Lizzie is she came from a real place of joy in terms of like how you can make a difference and how you can sort of change things, and that was really, I think that was really quite powerful as well, sort of thing. I mean, and in terms of the themes, like originally we were sort of had this revelation that you know, we would get into these states of flow sort of thing, or and that was what was sort of really sort of drawing us back again and again. And so we sort of tried to sort of create the themes around that, in terms of, so it's almost like a formula of like getting into flow, and all of the components that you need to sort of engage in or face or deal to get into that space. And then interweaved with that is the stories of the women. And it was quite a challenging task, sort of you know, getting that, and also, you know, how we did it as well. You know, it was really important for us to not really dictate the women's stories, and be sort of respectful to what they were saying. So you know, we had our ideas of where we wanted to go, but they, you know, they created the arch of the story as well, didn't they, Bron? So it was like, it was quite challenging to do it, but it was amazing.
Yeah. Also, the film was only actually meant to be 10 minutes long when we began. And I think, you know, because we were learning how to surf at the same time, and we were really getting into surfing ourselves, the more we were learning about the connection of being out in the water. So the more we were learning about having to be patient with yourself and how important playfulness is, etc. And this was becoming more and more apparent in our day-to-day lives compared to our film as well. So, you know, we didn't really know what flow was then, because flow and mindfulness weren't buzzwords back then. So we knew we were going surfing and we were getting these feelings, but we couldn't quite place it in a container quite yet, until we spoke to Tamara and she was telling us about mindfulness and flow. And then actually we put the film on hold for 2 years, I think it was, because we were getting the concepts confused. So it was there were so many themes we were trying to throw into it at once, but we had an ending which was compassion, and we knew it was about connection, but to actually weave all these things together was actually quite tricky. So yeah, we took a break for a while, didn't we?
For sure. I mean, I just think, the whole process always, it just takes so long, the whole thing. But I mean, I love that. It's very involved making a film. It's, you know, it's really complex. But I kind of wanted to touch back on that, the thing about you saying about letting the women tell their stories themselves and not influencing, because that's obviously something that we try and do too. You try not to put words into people's mouths, even though you've obviously got your own ideas of how you kind of want the film to flow. But I think that really came across, that it was their voices telling their stories. And although there were several themes going, it you know, somehow it all kind of, yeah, like you say, it all flowed really nicely. Because things aren't that simple, really, are they? Like, I know, obviously, you want to make a film simple, the theme's simple, but actually there's so many reasons why you would love going surfing or whatever it is, paddleboarding, climbing, whatever. It gives you so much. So did you change, you've obviously changed direction several times, but when you got to the final sort of cut, you know, did you have to really wrestle with leaving out some gems? Or, you know, there's always those bits that you want to use and you don't know what to do with them. Did you have that?
So many. So many. We had like about 100 post-it notes on the wall behind us, and
we're like, oh, we just put this one in and be like, oh, but that's a bit similar to that one, and
yeah. And the problem with that is that it's like pulling a thread as well. As soon as you put a scene in, the scene afterwards doesn't quite make sense, doesn't go visually with the scene before, whatever. And we wanted that throughout the whole film. We wanted the whole thing to flow and feel like you sort of went on sort of like a meditative journey, really. We didn't want it to be hard cutting all the time to different things. So
how did the characters feel about the film when they saw it afterwards? I mean, I think I also really like the fact they didn't seem like the sort of people that would necessarily say, make a film about me, you know, like, I don't know, there's a lot of people out there that want films to be made of them. And I try to avoid those people for obvious reasons. But they seemed like just they wanted their story to come across rather than it be about them as such. So how did they feel about it once they watched it?
Well, we had Natalie come to the screening in Bristol, and she really loved it, and Lizzie was there, sorry, as well. And then because of the situation with the coronavirus, we were going to do some other sort of live shows and have like Dr. Tamara and then also Arlene at particular shows, but it was getting to a point where it'd been quite a while. So in the end, we sort of shared it with them online, and yeah, they were really happy with them. I think you know, Arlene, because we spent a lot of time with Arlene, we had quite a few times where we interviewed her. You know, at one point we were thinking of even doing a film separately on her alone, sort of thing. And I think we could still do that. You know, it's like she has so much interesting of stories and insight, and we've become really good friends with her in that process.
She's a real character, isn't she? She's a real character. She should make a great film, really. And because of all the cultural, you know, the heritage of Jersey as well, it was like, it was the first island. It's not technically Britain or England or whatever, but, you know, that introduced surfing as well back then. So, I mean, there's so much heritage there when it comes to surfing history, and, you know, her being, you know, the first female to sort of, you know, she's an absolute legend on the island. So, and she was just fascinating to talk to. And like Chrissy says, she's a real character. So I think when you're looking for characters for films, she's ideal, really.
And the thing about surfing is that, you know, like it has had that, it's got such a there's been so much where there's just like girls in their bikinis sitting on the beach, kind of, you know, some really major brands are doing some really disappointing kind of advertising, and, you know, there was a real interest in surfing and lots of women wanted to get in surfing, but somehow they all felt that they had to fit a certain style, narrative, type of woman, and obviously in this country it's very rarely like that anyway. It's not, you know, you're very rarely in your bikini in the UK, so if you surf in the UK or in Jersey, you've got to really love it. And I think that was so important to get that across, that it's actually about the action of going surfing, and it's not necessarily, you know, there weren't actually there weren't really any men in the film that I remember, which is interesting in the sense that, I mean, I don't suppose that was that a plan, or, you know, but it just felt like it did feel like a women's film about women doing stuff that gave them something.
We wanted it to feel quite feminine, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that the sea feels quite feminine and the flowing sort of nature of the seas. So it all again revolved around the feeling that we wanted to convey. I think little Jacques, he was 5 years old or something. He's our star male of the film, really. Yeah, with the, you know, the childlike presence. But
and also, when we were first thinking about doing a film, at that time there was I can't recall very many female-focused films in surfing. There was a very sort of adrenaline focused fueled sort of vibe in sort of the surf films, because I was trying to find something that would really inspire me, and you know, there are some amazing films out about male surfers that are really inspiring, and I just sort of felt like, well, actually there's so many films out there that us as women we watch, and they have that male perspective, and so it should just be fine for there to be that female perspective, and if there is an issue with that, there shouldn't be, because we're experiencing the opposite sort of thing. So it should just be a natural thing as well, sort of thing. So and
it's true, actually. We've watched lots of surf films over the years. We've got like old videos, you know, from like, because everyone used to buy. It's such a culture of buying surf videos and stuff, and DVDs and stuff. And there are a few, like Blue Crush or something, I think it was, and there are a few, but there's not loads. So most of the information that any woman wanting to get involved in surfing, it would be through like the magazines, old style, or, you know, online and stuff. But yeah, you're right, there's not that many. I can't think of many films. I mean, I personally was drawn to longboarding because it had a less aggressive, more chilled, more feminine feel to it, and so I have a longboard.
Yeah, so Danielle, I was looking at some of the other films that you've done this morning before this, and what was really interesting to me is that all the women that you've been filming and sort of engaging with through your filmmaking, they're all sort of quite different, have different sports and stuff. So I'm just wondering, for you, what is it that really attracts you to those people and their sort of journey or as such?
Yeah, it is interesting, because on a personal level, I'm probably slightly more drawn to adventure sports for recreational purposes. But I've spent my whole sort of career in elite sport, I suppose, promoting women's sport and just a culture of sport generally. So there is a huge sort of range that doesn't have a sort of obvious sort of link. If I'm honest, what I really love are people that are doing sports that don't normally get much coverage. So I'm generally less interested than, say, an Olympic gold medalist, because they get so much coverage anyway, unless they've got an interesting story, of course. I think my biggest problem is that because I've got such a broad knowledge of sport, and because of what I've done, I know so many different people in all these different sports, that I can just get so enthusiastic about pretty much anything. And my biggest problem is actually narrowing it down to like who I'm going to do something with. I just want to do so much all the time. There's so many stories that I would like to tell. I mean, ultimately, a lot of my own personal little films, which is what I, you know, my own sort of training myself to become a better filmmaker, they'll just be things that work really well. Like, you know, I just have a good relationship with them. They feel very authentic. They have something that they want to talk about. They have a purpose. I do get people getting in touch, just saying, could you make a film about me? I'm doing this. And just like doing an A to B race or whatever it's not enough. There has to be more to it. So, for example, the Georgia Pilkington film, so obviously particularly interesting because of her disabilities that she has and her different relationships she has with sport and climbing and what it gives her. But it was just so important. Climbing had given her so much confidence as an individual. You know, a young woman, you know, most young women at that age, you know, have insecurities, but she has other things, other issues to overcome. And yeah, so yeah, choosing, I mean, I don't know, there just has to be some other message, some other story, some sort of purpose to it. And actually, interestingly, sometimes people don't realise that they've got something that they want to say, really. I can see it in them, and until they're having this conversation, they don't really realise that they would like to be an advocate for something or help inspire other women until they start talking, you know. And then you sort of realise that actually, or when you explain to people that it's so important for other women to see these films, you know, the classic, you can't be what you can't see, and there's so few women's sports and adventure films out there. There's just so much work to be done, and women, and they tend to really realize that during the process, and then that kind of adds different dimension, really.
I was just going to ask before, how did you in that Engage Your Senses film, how did you find your flow with Georgia? Like, did you know the location really well? Had you been there before? Had you like had a look around and you knew what you wanted to film, or did you just arrive there and shoot her and like not shoot her, but and had you chatted to her quite a lot before? So did you like create a rapport with her, or was it all quite new?
So I'd interviewed a lot of athletes over the years, all different levels of athletes, but making a film is different because you know, they're there, so they have to be trusting, and they have to, you know, we're capturing how they're feeling at that moment, being asked the questions, which is very different from just writing down the answers and creating a story out of it. So from the very beginning, I really wanted to get to know the athletes before I filmed them. So I always go and have at least one meeting, if not loads of meetings with them, without a camera, without anything, and just go and have a cup of tea and chat, and just try and for me to understand where they're coming from. So obviously that gives me themes, but more importantly, for them to be able to trust me and be able to relax during the filming, and know that I'm not trying to catch them out, or, you know, I'm not trying to tell, I don't know, have my own agenda, like we talked about before, that it's very much their story, and just to really put them in a relaxed frame of mind for the filming. And actually a couple of the athletes that we have worked with over time have had really bad experiences with journalists before, where they literally just come straight in with a really difficult question, have made them feel really uncomfortable, they've not enjoyed the experience, didn't want to do any more. And in my sort of background in journalism, I've heard this several times, quite aggressive questioning, and it really put them off. So I knew that it was really important that we had built up a relationship before we even started filming. And then the location, actually, Georgia chose it. So I said to her, where are you going to feel comfortable? What's going to be right for you? Where's going to be familiar and, you know, and also look beautiful. I know the area pretty well, but I hadn't been to that specific place. So it was a real treat. The biggest challenge really of the whole Engage Your Senses series was that they were all quite short shooting. So we had like 3 hours or so. And as you know, sometimes you don't get what you want in 3 hours, and lots can go wrong. So we have to be really efficient, really kind of on it. And I guess that's why, if you've done all your research, you can just sort of nail some of the key things that you need to get, you know, nail it really before the athlete gets tired physically, but also mentally. You know, there's only so much questioning people can take before you can start seeing their eyes glaze over, and then people can see that on film, can't they? It's obvious.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. I watched the pole vaulting film that you the 65. I don't know how exactly. It's just between 65 and 69 doing this pole vaulting. I was just like,
that's right. Yeah.
How amazing is she?
Yeah. So I was just going to say the pole vaulting film is part of it was like a kind of like a pilot really for a film that we're working on at the moment, which is a long project, which is now going to be longer because of the situation we're in. And we're following 5 to 6 different masters athletes. So like you were saying, you were going to have different ages. We do have that. So we have someone in their late 40s, somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s, all still competing. But what is obviously, I mean, they're incredible athletes, and it's really inspiring to see, you know, 70, 80-year-olds, well, whatever age, they're all amazing competing. But the most amazing thing is really the community of them and the friendships, and that's why they do it. They do it to stay physically active, but they do it for the friendships and the camaraderie and the community. And you know, I'm working with a photographer who's been documenting this for 10 years, Alex Rotas, who is herself 70. She took up photography at 60 and has been photographing these athletes over the years and building up relationships with them and hearing their stories. And we were just talking, and I was like, you know, these stories need to be heard. You know, they're not just inspiring on a sporting level, they're inspiring on an age level and on what we perceive we can still do at all stages in our life. But what is wonderful is that some of them haven't taken up these sports until they're maybe 60 or even 70. You know, I just think for us that love doing sport and activity, the thought that you could take something up at 70 and have a really full and, you know, wonderful experience is just fantastic, right?
Amazing. Some of the films that you have, are there some films that you've been sponsored by brands and stuff, and the reason I'm asking that is because we approached sort of brands and stuff, but we ended up not having any brands that would be sort of determining what our storytelling would be. So I was just wondering if you do have that, and if you do, what's that like in terms of creating this kind of stories that you want to create?
Yeah, so the Engage Your Senses films were sponsored by Ellis Brigham, and it was very much a collaboration in terms of he was very happy I presented the themes of what we wanted to achieve with it. The time was really right. He wanted some more female content. So there was no compromise on the style of film at all, or you know, how we did it. The only compromise, and it wasn't really a compromise, was that he had some athletes that he wanted to be featured. So out of the 5, he'd chosen 3 and we chose 2. And obviously, you know, as a filmmaker, you'd rather choose all your athletes to work with, rather than sort of have any sort of being dictated to. But you know, it was very much a collaboration, and it worked out really well because they were all fantastic people. I do a lot of work with Leah Ditton, the ocean rower, as I'm sure you've seen, and that is challenging, because in terms of getting the right funder on board, because of the nature of what she's aiming to do, which to be the first woman to row across the Pacific from Japan to San Francisco. A lot of the narrative that people want to tell in that world is around the danger and being afraid and all of that stuff. But she is an incredibly accomplished sailor and rower, and she's only going to undertake this when she's ready, when she is physically, mentally, everything technically is ready. And so then it's a case of doing it. So for her, danger isn't a big story. So, but that's the narrative a lot of the brands might want to use. Finding the right partner to support that film is going to be an interesting challenge.
It became clear to me how you all 3 of you have this like personal level of interest in sport and in the outdoors, as it were. You know, is it easier in a way to, you know, make a film about Undercurrents where you have that connection to surfing, and how different is that? And you know, same to you, Danielle, as somebody who's always done sport and enjoyed sport, you know, same question.
I've done scuba diving and, you know, grew up on the beach, but I think with surfing you have so many life lessons that come along with the sport. You know, you've got the patience with yourself, the patience with the elements around you, you know, don't be so hard on yourself, all sorts of things, which I think when you're making a film, you ideally want the viewer to feel something. So whatever film you're making, you have to make sure that not just the information comes across, you've got to really get the viewer to feel as though they're there, really. And I think it would be quite difficult to make a surfing film like that, or something, an adventure film, without actually living it, really. I think, no, I mean, I'm not saying if you go do some extreme sport, you don't really have to climb Mount Everest yourself if you want to make a film about it or anything, but I think that connection of learning from nature should probably be there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think, I mean, I've always done sport and I've always enjoyed sport. And I think, like, my starting point was really that, you know, there's so many women and men, people that just don't like sport because their only experience of sport is maybe school sport or competitive sport. So my starting point was really to try and get across to people in the film, like, a sense of, you know, what people are getting out of this sport, and it be something that people will watch and think, I want to have a go at that. And I think unless you have that joy of how it feels to do something, and as I said, I mean, I could pretty much enjoy most sports, you know, I just, you know, love being active. But if you somehow bring that across in the film, so that when someone's watching it, they think, God, I'd love to have a go at climbing, or I'd love to have a go at whatever. It's not, so it's conscious that I want to do that. I think the knowledge and the experience that I have, that I probably bring to the film is almost subconscious, because you don't really realize how much a part of you it is that you're talking about when you're making the films and when you're editing. I mean, I really love the editing part of it, and I am self-taught, and it is very instinctive. And I suppose because you've had those experiences of sport and what you've enjoyed about sport, that instinctively that comes out in the films, that you pull out those bits that tell that story. So I think it's really, really helpful. You don't have to, like you say, I mean, I have never, you know, done half the sports that I'm talking about. I don't speed skate. I've never rowed an ocean. I have you know, I can imagine I have had similar experiences to that, to those sports, so I can bring that out, I think.
Yes, but, I mean, I would say as well, you know, there's so many sort of challenges that everyone has in life, and actually my sort of real passion or real interest is actually doing what you love in life, and like adventure for me and being connected to nature. That is so, you know, as Bron sort of said, it's so sort of healing. There's so many lessons to it, and I feel like a lot of the women that we've met, they are following their passion in life, and I feel, for me anyway, when I'm hearing their stories, that's what really excites me, because they're sort of showing there's all these different ways in which you can follow your passion in life. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to take over everything, but it's so important to do what you love, and so many people don't get that opportunity. So when you can tell stories where people are doing that, it gives people that joy of like, oh, you know, I could try this or I can try that. I mean, everyone's got their own path, don't they, sort of thing. So yeah, and adventure just creates more adventure, and that's always amazing. So
well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us again for this second episode of our Adventure Uncovered conversation series. If you joined us last week, I hope you enjoyed the chat with Dan Raven Ellenson. And if you conversation series, if you joined us last week, ask our participants to mute their videos. If you joined us last week, hope you enjoyed that conversation, and hopefully you've just enjoyed that incredible chat with Christina, Bronwyn, and Danielle, all of whom, if I can get them all up, are here today now with us. Big hello to everybody. If I can ask that you mute any of your YouTube videos, and then I can unmute you guys. There we go. And we should all be able to say hi.
Hey there.
Fantastic. Got there in the end. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us. That was an amazing conversation that you guys had, the three of you, and with Rosie as well. And I found it particularly interesting as a female filmmaker, some of the comments and conversations that you had in that, and also as a sports enthusiast and somebody who loves the outdoors. So I've got a couple of questions, but we're going to jump straight in because it's actually really busy on the live chat. We've got a few pre-submitted questions, and there's a couple of questions for everybody, and some. We'll start with one for Bronwyn and Christina, and this is a question from Jane in Devon, who has said, the Undercurrents intro was absolutely captivating. How did the film come about? How did the surfers actually come to you? What actions did you take to actually get things off the ground? So you covered that a little bit in that conversation, but maybe we could, you did say in the conversation, well, how did we find the surfers? You said, well, they came to us, but how did that actually happen? Is there some prior contact there? Was it an email out of the blue? How do these connections come about?
That was actually an email from Eileen that we received. So we were really lucky like that. We were speaking to, I think what's really important is when you have an idea that you feel so close to, it's really nice to speak about it with loads of other people, because we were just chatting to a friend, and he just happened to mention, Eileen lived in Jersey and maybe he can get hold of her. And that's basically what he did. So she sent us an email saying, I'm really interested in your film. I'd love to be involved. And it went from there, really. So I think it is about speaking a lot, communicating what you're after and what you need. And people out there, if they believe in your film, they'll help you out.
Yeah, and also we spent time, didn't we, with the people that we got involved with, sort of building up relationships with them. so we could determine if we were both on the same page, because that was also really important as well, wasn't it, that we were sort of going for the sort of same thing. We wanted to sort of have people involved who were interested in what we were doing as well. So there was definitely some time that we spent sort of building up those relationships with the people that we met. So that was another aspect of it as well. Well, I mean, I think working with Bronwyn's got amazing capacity with music and sort of the feelings of stuff. So she was really able, I'm speaking on behalf of you here, Bronwyn. I don't know.
Appreciate that.
From my perspective, working with Bronwyn, like, you know, we'd always be having these conversations. She'd be talking about the feeling of it and stuff like that. And so for me, that was really profound in what we created. And we also both wanted to create sort of an experience whereby we were experiencing those flow-like moments. So, you know, like, because Bron's been doing editing for a long time and my background's photography, so she would have I would say, well, you know, maybe this or maybe that, and then she would be able to sort of go, well, we could do it like this. So it was a real sort of exchange in terms of, I wouldn't necessarily know how to create some aspects of it, and then we'd have this dialogue, and then she would create something magical, and I'd be like, yeah, that's amazing.
We were definitely on the same page with how we wanted the whole thing to feel. I mean, the whole film itself was quite organically made, in that when we began, we didn't really know where we were going with it, but we knew the end. We knew it was all about compassion. So we knew, you know, being in the water, being connected to your environment leads to compassion somehow. Compassion within yourself, as in Arlene's character that we saw, and compassion with, you know, your wider environment, which is Natalie. So we knew that that's where we needed to go, and we were both on the same page with that. And I think that was really important, because there was no fighting with the narratives or anything. So we could both bring whatever skills we had to create that, really.
Amazing. And it definitely worked. Definitely a beautiful blend of those skills. That leads me on to a really nice question for Danielle actually next. And this is from Sarah, who's in London. And she's asked, and this is one of my favorite quotes as well. She says, I love the quote that you use, "You can't be what you can't see." I sort of have a similar one, which I have on a post-it note by my computer. She was actually by Trevor Noah, who says, if you don't know about space, you can't dream of being an astronaut. And this is that idea of, if we want to inspire people to, you know, to get out there and like you just said, have that compassion for these places, then we need to show it to them. And the same thing applies with the people, the characters that we see. So Sarah's asking, what can we all do as women and men to help women be seen more in general, but especially in the world of traditionally male-dominated active sports, outdoor adventure sports such as surfing, skiing, skating, that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's really nice that she mentioned men as well, you know, because it's not just about women supporting women. It's, you know, anybody can, you know, support people that are doing good stuff. So I think what's been really lovely being involved in the sports industry for so long, while it's been so small, is it's been such a great community. And on the whole, women are very supportive and promote and retweet and share great stuff. And I think, you know, like, social media has been fantastic for women's sport in terms of taking control of the situation and, you know, creating our own narrative and putting our own stuff out there. So what I would say is that really just be really generous in your sharing of other people's projects. And, you know, I do this a lot. You know, I shout out about other people's things a lot. Sometimes we all get too busy. We don't notice. We're so caught up in our own worlds. But I do think it's worth, you know, seeking stuff out and sharing it with people. You know, as I said, social media is fantastic for that. So just copy stuff, send stuff, shout about it, you know, tell everybody. That's all we can do, but we have the tools to do it now, right?
Fantastic advice there, and definitely we can at the end we'll be asking you for all of your social media channels and so on. Of course, you can always follow us at Adventure Uncovered, and we will kind of amplify and share all of the messages from all of our guests. Next question comes up from Sam, who's watching on the live chat. Hi Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Sam's actually got two questions, and the first question is he says, thank you for the awesome film, Bron and Christina. His question from Vancouver is, what's next for you in terms of filmmaking, and to what extent has that been shaped by Undercurrents? So this is again a question for all of us, and Danielle, I'm sure you can answer as well. What's next? But more of an esoteric question: how does the making of one film shift your perspective, shift your approach? What legacy does that leave when you then approach the next film?
Chrissy, you can go first.
So, I mean, we at the moment, me and Bron, we're spending quite a lot of time sort of sharing our film project in lots of different creative, innovative ways. And I would say that all of the topics that we explored and developed and learned about or got to know in a deeper way during the film, I speak for myself. I'm still like wanting to explore that more deeply, and at the moment we're having a great opportunity to do that through some of the ideas and projects we're doing with Undercurrents, in terms of sort of we're using some of the stuff that we weren't able to put in the film because the women in the film said so many amazing things. So that's like a really great opportunity for us to sort of delve more deeply, and we're connecting with loads of different amazing people through that. So it's almost like it feels like it's turning into an even bigger thing for us. It's not just the film, it's like taking us down sort of different avenues and stuff like that. And then, we're also doing our own sort of projects. We're both sort of creative people, so we're doing stuff independently as well. I'm, spending a bit more time doing music and a bit more time doing writing. And yeah, I'll pass on to you, Bronwyn.
And talking of music, the last track on the credit roll is Chrissy's beautiful angelic voice. So what Chrissy was talking about, how we're using sound bites that we couldn't use in the film, it didn't fit with the themes of in particular Lizzie, because we've joined up with this 100 Days of Blue. I don't know if anybody's heard about it, but if you look up the hashtag Blue Mind, hashtag 100 Days of Blue, it's if you can be on, around, near water, or talk about it with people for the next 100 days. So doing a few things that can sort of complement that. It was such a great collaboration. I'm pretty sure we'll do another one. And yeah, in terms of what it's taught me, I think surfing in general and doing the film, you really realize the important part your mind plays when you doing anything, climbing, surfing, whatever activity you have, and whatever's going through your head at the moment can really affect the outcome. And I think that's always fascinated me from the moment I started surfing. So personally, I've started a new thing called Elemental Frames, and that's going to be basically films about your head crafted from your heart. And so really looking forward to delving deeper into that.
Sounds absolutely incredible, and we'll definitely keep our eyes out for that. What about you, Danielle?
So what have I learned? I mean, I'm relatively new to filmmaking. I've watched films all my life, but actually making films is a big past sort of 3 years really. So every time I learn so much, and I'm constantly frustrated by my lack of knowledge and my technical skills and all of that. So I just learn so much every time, and I always want to improve. I'm one of those people that's never really happy with quite what they've done. But our next project that we're working on, our next major project, we've kind of got two really, but we're doing a film about masters athletes, so 5 female athletes between the ages of 47 and 84. We're following them. We were meant to be following them this summer. We're going to be following them through to next summer to the World Championships. And that just brings a whole different perspective in terms of, the whole, what we can all do as women, but also at different ages in life. And they're such great characters and just such ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Again, it's a cliche, but it is really interesting.
Amazing. That follows on really nicely to another question for you, Danielle, from James in London, who was really intrigued by, I think it's Alex Rotas, who took up photography at 60. Could you maybe share some more about that? Where did you meet? What was her background before? Have you worked on anything else together?
Yeah, so Alex and I are collaborating on this. It's called Maverick Generation Project. She, as you said, she's been filming. She took up photography at 60 because she was frustrated at the lack of visibility of older women doing sport. So she took up photography specifically to go and capture it. So she's built up this amazing relationship with these women, and men, the masters community over the past 10 years. I first met Alex about 5 years ago when I was running sportsister.com, which was a women's sports magazine, and then also through the Women's Sports Trust Awards. And she lives locally. We just struck up a friendship. We have a lot, we just enjoy the same kind of things. We've got the same purpose in life. We both want to do good work, and it's just been a really a match made in heaven. She's got the connections with the masters athletes and the good relationships, and so she brings something really special to the collaboration. She's great. Yeah.
Amazing. So then another question from Sam. Sam's second question is asking, are there any other athletes, filmmakers, artists that anybody who enjoyed these films might also like to go and find out about? So I'm going to actually turn that into two questions. I'm going to say, are there any other films about similar people, might be films, might be books, about similar people to the characters in your films that you think, well, if you like this, then you should also go and find out about these other people? But then I'm going to add a second part to Sam's question, if you don't mind, Sam, which is there anybody that there isn't any films about yet that you would like or you think should be available? Don't know who wants to start that one.
Sure. I have some podcasts that might be of interest.
Perfect. Let's hear them.
Haven't watched anything recently film-wise, but there's a new podcast out there called Ocean State of Mind, which I listened to, and that had Eski Britton on, who's a big wave female surfer from Ireland. Very poetic how she speaks and eloquent, and just lots of nuggets of wisdom. And also he's spoken to a lady from Jersey called Lindsay Hawken, who's she's a brand strategist, but also an ocean advocate as well. So that podcast was just full of beautiful wisdom about the sea, really. And then there's Looking Sideways podcast as well, and his name's Matt, and he often talks to really interesting artists, filmmakers. So you'd definitely find something on there, I think. And the book, That Oceanic Feeling, who Arlene introduced us to the first time we went over there, I'm now reading it for the third time because it leaves such a mark on me. It's from a female perspective, but yeah, anyone can read it. It's beautiful.
Brilliant. So we've got 2 podcasts and a book. What else can we add to our list of enlightenment?
So I because my memory is a bit of a sieve sometimes, but I saw that question earlier popped up, so I've done a bit of preparation. So Kitty Kipper on Instagram, she's an artist. She's an amazing artist. What she does is she does beach cleans, and the stuff that she gets from beach clean, she turns into really beautiful pieces of artwork, and she's really inspired me. So I started doing a little bit of weaving, not to her standard, but it's really beautiful stuff that she does. So that's on Instagram, Kitty Kipper. And Dr. Wallace J. Nichols has done the Blue Mind book, so that's a really great starting point in terms of learning more about Blue Mind, and also just following what Lizzie I can't ever say her surname, Lizzie La Ballestia, who's in it.
Yeah, La Ballestia.
Yeah, anything that she's doing. And then also in terms of filmmaking, I haven't found any sort of similar films to what we've done, but through my travels I've met some inspirational women who do filmmaking. One is Elizabeth Pepin Silva. She's really amazing. Also Risa Mara Machuca, she runs the Sayulita Film Festival, so she always sort of finds really interesting films. And then also me and Bronwyn, when we were making the film, we met Rebecca Coley, and she runs the Jersey Surf Film Festival, and she's working on a really interesting film called Point of Change about the Neas Island, and it's got like a humanitarian angle to it. And then the only other thing is I've got a lovely friend in California, and she creates these really beautiful zines for water people. It's called Sea Witches. So if you just Google Sea Witches zine or whatever, you can order these really beautiful, they're pieces of artwork really. They're just sort of zine magazines for water people. So that's
absolutely amazing. Sounds brilliant. Danielle, have you got anything to add? That's a beautiful long list. What we'll have to do is at Adventure Uncovered, we'll maybe type up a whole list and tweet out all the recommendations. Stay tuned for that and follow us to find out. Danielle, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just add the one, Jen Randall of Lightshed Films, who made the Sarah Uten film of the adventure that went around the world. She's also done some quite a lot of climbing and outdoorsy stuff. She's great, and she's someone that I look to. She's won one of the Banff Mountain Film Festival awards, so come on, it's pretty good.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Some brilliant recommendations. So hopefully, Samuel in Vancouver, that's answered your question. You've got lots of homework to do there. What we'd love is if anybody that does read or listen to or watch any of those recommendations, do tweet us about it and tell us what you thought and share it, because it's great to amplify this network. Again, that links back to the question of, what can we all do to be, sharing these incredible stories? Well, we can all start sharing. So I'd love to hear your feedback, Samuel, on that, and anybody else who's listening and is inspired for any of those. It sounds like we've got to go and do some clapping for the NHS now. So I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much. I just want you to each have a chance to finish off with where can we follow you? Where could we find your work? Where can we tweet you? That sort of thing. Are you going to be around on Twitter for the rest of the evening if people will have any extra burning questions for you? So Danielle, do you want to start?
Hi, so our website is finditfilm.com, and our Twitter handle and Instagram and everything are all the same. So it's just Find It Film. And I'm going to be online if anybody wants to ask anything. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Bron?
So you can find us at undercurrentsfilm.com, and our hashtag is the same, undercurrentsfilm. And we're on Instagram and we're on Facebook. My personal website's bronwynharvey.com for things I've done in the past, editing things. And the thing going into the future is elemental.frames on Instagram. There's nothing on that at the moment, but hopefully we'll add something soon.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. And Christina?
Yeah, and my personal website is chrissybaldwin.com, and then I also have makingwavesglobal.com, so that's the other one.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Do follow us at Adventure Uncovered, and do follow all of these amazing women as well. We look forward to joining you same time next week, where we'll be talking about wild swimming with Amy and Callum, both incredible wild swimmers, talking about their films as well. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much to Danielle, to Bronwyn and to Christina for everything they've done, for their incredible films, and for joining us a couple of weeks ago for that conversation, and again tonight. So hope to see you same time next week. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great. Thanks.
Bye.
Been great. Thanks.